Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hey guys, I have with me Meg Applegate. She is a job search coach, resume and LinkedIn profile writer. I have known her now for a couple of years, but let me introduce her to you. She is a certified professional resume writer and a job search strategist. She connects high-achieving women nationwide to career advancement. She was named, I think it was last year, a top expert to follow on LinkedIn by JobScan. And she is the winner of the 2020 National Resume Writers Association Roar Award for Resume Excellence. She also earned Career Director International's Career Innovator Award, an honorable mention for her resume branding workbook. Her work is published in the most recent editions of Expert Resumes and LinkedIn Profiles for Managers and Execs, and also Resumes for Dummies. So definitely go check those out. Meg, thank you so much for joining me in the middle of Corona life. I know you have a lot going on, so I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Virginia. It is an honor. I respect you so much in the resume writing field, and I'm a big fan of your podcast. So I'm really excited to be here.
So you heard me give a quick overview of what you have accomplished, but tell me how you got into this.
Yes. So I actually started early in my career in nonprofit and was doing fundraising and event management, and just knew long-term with the weekend hours and the nights that this just wasn't going to be sustainable for me. And my husband and I knew that we wanted a family eventually. So I quickly pivoted to higher education. And to do that, I got my graduate degree. And in my first semester, I enrolled just by chance out of the electives that were available in a career counseling class. And I fell hard. I loved it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And even at that point, I thought, maybe I'm in the wrong degree program. I need to be a counselor. But at that point, it's too late.
You're like, I've already got the school bills for this degree. So
totally. Yes. So in that class, my wheels were kind of turning, like maybe I could own my own shingle one day. So I did continue with my degree. I worked in the university setting with undergraduates in academic and career development offices. Fast forward about a few years, 3 kids later, I had worked full-time, part-time with kids. And then once I had my son, my third, basically all the cards in our life kind of got thrown up, kind of like a lot of what's happening to people today, right? Like you have to reevaluate your priorities and making critical career decisions. And so that kind of happened to us about 4 years ago. And so my salary basically would be equaling our daycare. And so
that's what drove me. I hear you. Yeah.
So we had lost our in-home daycare provider that we loved. My husband was moving into a different job. And so we just had to make these decisions. And I remember as I was considering what to do, I was calling daycare places and people would laugh at me because I had 3 kids, 4 and under. I had an infant that would be going at like 8 weeks, and they were like, no way can we find you a spot. So that really kind of sealed the deal that, I'm going to take a season to raise my kids. And in between the play dates and the diaper changing and sweeping the floor and all that, I started dreaming up what is now Hinge Resume Collaborative. So I had never heard of professional resume writing as an industry until I got connected with a professional resume writer. And I've nerdily always loved writing my resume, and even like applying for jobs to me was exciting. Like just like the possibilities of it all, I really loved. So when that came across my view, I was like, yes, I could do this.
Perfect.
And it really worked with that season of my life because I was working in nap times and evenings, and I'd wake up really early on Saturday mornings and go to my neighborhood Starbucks while my kids were watching cartoons and kind of nail out a few things. So that's how I got here and started.
I love that. And so many people in our industry are career changers by necessity, which I think makes us sort of really well suited to help people that are trying to do the same thing. I mean, sometimes the circumstances are different, but we all get it because we've been there.
Yes.
No one went to school thinking I'm going to be a professional resume writer. It evolved it, or they landed on it by happenstance.
Totally. And I think that's really common for women too. The different seasons that we have in our life. I know I felt a lot of pressure in college. Like I have to have it all figured out. Laughing now, right? It's like pivoting multiple times, right? Everyone has different careers and different seasons, and transferring your skills. So I think that's really common, especially for women, because once you have a kid, you know, my husband could go back to work. Everything's the same. For me, I'm like pumping during breaks. You know, I'm writing grocery lists on my lunch hour.
Yeah, and we are often the default parent. And so, rightly or wrongly, sometimes your career choices are driven by the fact that you need to be the one that can drop everything and run when stuff happens, or at least the majority of the time. That's what I found. My husband's job wasn't as flexible, and so mine needed to be, because I had 4 kids and something was going to go wrong, whether I liked it or not. Yeah. So. You work with a variety of career seekers, but I love the work that you're doing with women. Are there a couple of challenges that you see women facing that are testing the job search waters or making a career change right now?
Yeah, well, I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up COVID-19 and the situation that we're in. I mean, women more so are affected just because of the industries as far as unemployment that are being, right? The retail, hospitality, tourism, a lot of women work in those sectors. But I also think too, kind of what we were talking about, the mental load. So of caring, even if your kids are in school, you're not having to homeschool them or supervise e-learning, that mental load of the to-do list that's keeping and running in your head, as we just talked about, is
as the emperor of your household, right?
Yes, is so much worse than it was before, which was even an issue before. And I recently read a health survey that said like over half of women would say that COVID-19 has negatively impacted their mental health. So I think that is a big consideration, but I also think time. So a lot of women are downshifting, they're quitting their jobs potentially. They're making very critical career decisions based on the circumstances around them.
You're right. And that the e-learning piece and the health piece, there's just, and that mental checklist that's the way a lot of women's minds work. And so they can't turn it off.
Right.
I don't think we're good at compartmentalizing that way.
No. So I think that's right now is a big challenge for women. So because of our circumstances, that is really weighing women down and also causing changes in their career. But generally speaking, I would say with the clients that I work with, like confidence and knowing your self-worth is really generally an issue, like a return to work mom, for example, or even parent. But since we're speaking towards women today, and I think we do this when we're working too. We take on the attributes of what we do for a living to define who we are, and we blur that boundary very easily. So I think when you've been out of the job market for a bit, that confidence of stepping back in of who you are and your skills and what you have to offer, it's hard to get back there and speak confidently about yourself. Or even if you're working now and you're making a pivot or you want to level up your career, you can get swallowed by your job duties and not see your unique contributions and what you bring to the table. And in a job search, you have to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. So you're saying we have a hard time. We have a hard time differentiating what we do from who we are.
Right. And you've heard this really stat, right? That, women for a job ad, for example, they want to meet 100% of the qualifications. So
and men are like, 60, 70, 60%, I'm good. Yeah.
Right. Or that probably upper mid, the middle of that would be generally the recommendation. So I think that also leads into that expertise trap. Like high achieving women really have a perfectionist bent towards them, I would say. Yeah. And so a lot of leveling up your career too is like, I want to master this position flawlessly, right? I want to be able to do this so well that people are just going to notice me and it's going to happen. well, I do agree that you have to do your job excellently. You also have to get to know people. They have to trust you. You have to show that you can contribute at a higher level rather than just kind of getting into that expertise trap of I have to know this to be able to move up the next rung or to the next
and you're
area.
right. And until they feel like they've mastered it, they don't feel like they can claim proficiency.
Exactly. And you get stuck.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Well, and men are different about that. They are more willing to not wing it, but they say, you know what, I mastered the majority of it.
Right.
I'm good enough to go. And
right. Or seeing the transferability, I think.
That's
even
right. Yeah.
in talking with a woman recently, she's like, the job posting said a certain amount of teams that she's managed. She's like, well, I haven't managed that high of number. But I'm like, but you've managed teams before. So you can just talk through how you would do that. And even that was a stumbling block.
Right.
Like, well, I haven't met that criteria. So how can I apply for that? So I think it's a mind shift, a mindset shift, and a confidence thing too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And men are willing to say, well, I don't need that because I've got this, or this is, again, it's close enough, which I think is a wonderful trait.
I agree.
What is it that you find that your clients are most surprised by when they are beginning job search or once they're in it?
I think, well, I'm sure you get this a lot, Virginia, is I have people come to me and say, I just need a general resume, a quick update. And I think people are surprised about the work that you need to do before the actual job search and resume writing process. And we live in an immediate gratification culture, right? Oh, I just need this key component. I'm on my way. But you really need to be able to do that inner work beforehand, right? Answer kind of the what, where, why, and how. What roles are you targeting? Where do you want to work? What kind of environment do you flourish in? What do you need out of your work? You really have to be able to answer those questions first to be able to have an effective job search and a top performing resume, because otherwise you're going to be floundering. You're not going to be knowing where you're going. You need kind of to build that map or those guideposts to then have that strategic kind of step-by-step plan of where you're going and what you need to do.
Well, and I know I do speak with a lot of women that aren't necessarily clients, just women I know where they have taken many years off and they are eager to get back, but they know they can't go back to what they did originally, but they want to cast a wide net because like, well, I could maybe do this or I could maybe do that. And not recognizing that when you say, I need a quick update or a general resume, you've created something that's so diluted that nobody knows where to put you.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I really love what Madeline Mann says, her little catchphrase of you need a soul search before you job search. I think that's so essential. And I think especially for women who, and I think this could be true for those that are working outside of the home too, but as a stay-at-home mom, you lose yourself in bending to the needs of others. And I have many part conversations with moms in my neighborhood of, I don't even know what I like anymore.
Yeah.
Who am I? And it's kind of coming to grips with like, who am I now? I know who I was in the past and what was defined me by my work, but now I know I'm a mom, but who am I outside of this little bubble that I've been in for so long? And so I think that's where it takes hard work to do that soul search. And I think, especially when you have young kids, I mean, I've worked full-time, part-time, I've stayed at home. It's all hard. It's all exhausting.
Yes, exactly.
There's no way where it's like, oh, this is the ticket. It's exhausting. After you've done your day, it's really hard to have that mental energy, especially to be like, okay, let's kind of dig in further. And so that's difficult.
Yeah. And I am, because I'm older than you, I am working, I see a lot of women that are empty nest or about to be empty nest where maybe they have worked on and off here and there with part-time stuff. But they've never, that was just a job. It was something to bring in some money. They've never had the hours in their day to think about, well, what do I like? What am I good at? And to really sort of then pick a role that's more than just a job. It maybe is a career or it's something that's a passion. They've never had the time or the luxury of the time to think about it.
Yeah. What a great perspective. It is interesting how we take those seasons and curves in our life where we kind of come back again and again to that point.
That's like,
really
what are my hobbies? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't have any.
Totally. And now it's even harder. It's like you can't really do as many things and even experiment.
Netflix is your hobby. Right. I know. Exactly. That's so true.
So it's tricky. But there are ways around that. I think that like nonprofits, especially right now, are really suffering. And so if there's someone that wants to dip their toe in the job search and building skills or growing them, I mean, I think that you could probably email a few nonprofits and say, hey, like if you're a graphic designer that hasn't done it in a while, like, hey, do you have this need? I'm willing to work on some projects for free, for example. I think that that's an undertapped way.
That and small businesses that have had to ratchet their budgets so tight to try to survive. If someone could offer a chance for free to do some stuff that helps the small business, I mean, it's a win-win.
Totally.
So shifting gears really quickly, or just a little bit, I should say. What advice do you have for someone? I'm sure you get this where they reach out to you and say, well, I'm thinking about making a career move now. How should I get started?
Yeah, I think for the stay-at-home parent, I think when you decide to take a career break, you need to think kind of loosely. I mean, if anything in 2020 has taught us that life happens.
Yeah,
it's out of our control.
Are going to come. That's true.
Yeah, to just have a loose general sense of like, hey, I want to stay home for 1 year or 5 or 10 or whatever it is. But I think that having kind of somewhat of that loose plan that can then indicate towards the end, potentially that you're sensing of this gap of stepping back into the job search is to really use and grow your skills where your feet are planted. I know I mentioned like, hey, reach out to nonprofits. I feel like women are burdened of like, I can't do one more thing.
Yeah.
So I think bloom where you're planted, go where you're usually going, but use your skills or explore different skills in those areas. Like if you love to volunteer at your kid's school, unfortunately it looks a little bit different now, but maybe virtually, right? You could take some initiative and join the PTSA or do some leadership in that area. Or if you always volunteer with a community organization, that's looking different now, but you could potentially pivot and explore different skills. There are sports teams, or I know I worked with a stay-at-home parent who raised thousands of dollars for her kids' school, and the massive amount of committees that she led for that. I mean, those are all very transferable skills.
That's right. I love that bloom where you're planting. I was the editor of every flippin' school newsletter at my school and did so much email marketing for things because that I wanted to keep my writing and my tech skills fresh.
Yeah.
And it helps. What I love about it too is it really helps to minimize that employment gap that people are so worried about. What are people going to think if they see I haven't been working? And, paid or unpaid, doesn't matter. The work is the work.
Right. And I think too, it gives you something of your own,
True.
to kind of, that's what I loved about starting my own resume writing business of like, this was my own kind of mental stimulation, at first of like, I really love this and this is exciting to me. And it made me become a better mom because I was honing my skills in these different areas.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that.
I did just read a Forbes article this morning that said that 73% of hiring managers are turning to and hiring freelancers during the pandemic. So I know women especially are, really starting side hustles, starting their own gig. And that is also a way too, to then pivot to the market essentially.
Yeah. And even I feel like the connectivity and the willingness of more companies to go virtual has really opened up some doors that just really weren't open before.
Yes.
Which could work to people's advantage.
I completely agree. I remember when I worked full time and I really petitioned to go part-time and they let me do like a consolidated schedule, but in the end wasn't approved, or in higher education, remote work basically was shut down by the university. Like we don't work remotely. So I know that remote work, right, isn't the way that the complete future, but it definitely has put us over that hump of like, this is possible. It opens up more flexibility for both parents to be able to work and to be flexible for kids' schedules or for partners or whatever it is.
Right.
And that is really nice because I remember coming up against that brick wall. Again, I'm like, surely we can figure out, a remedy for this. But again, I think that is, if there is a positive thing out of that, the pandemic.
Yeah,
I
pandemic silver lining. Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
For women that are working, though, I would say to really gather like an inner female circle of women. I read a study from 2019 from the University of Notre Dame and Northwestern that you place at a higher leadership level, 2.5 times higher of a job level if you have a female inner circle. So it's kind of similar to like having a personal board of directors, that's common to say, but basically having women that you're talking with and relating with and professionally growing together and having that social support to then move forward in your career. Because I think I'm a believer that you can't really be self-made, right? I mean, we are designed for community. Yes. And so I think rallying a group of women together, and obviously men are great allies in sponsorship programs. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you need to have a group of people that you're coming together with and can grow together, keep each other accountable.
That is so 2.5 times higher when they have a professional social circle that includes that's made of women.
Female dominated. Yeah. So I think they surveyed their graduate programs. So it would be MBA candidates essentially. And so I found that very interesting.
Fascinating. When I first started, I didn't think of this, but a friend that we were friends through school, she was going out on her own as a CPA, and she gathered 5 of us, and we would meet monthly to share leads. And literally, that's all it started out as, and it grew into much more. She was ahead of time before we even realized it. That's so cool.
Yeah. And I think Jessica Sweet and I have paired up during the pandemic to offer
I love her.
A career strategy mastermind that's focused on women. So it's 6 women and both of us for 6 weeks. And I've personally seen that magic happen. I mean, while we're there helping with making a job search plan, but really the magic is in the women joining together. And that's been really neat to see. I feel like I've seen kind of the survey come alive essentially in those groups.
Okay. So it's Career Strategy Mastermind, and that's with Jessica Sweet, who is Wishing Well
Coaching.
That's right. Okay.
Yes.
She and I are both masters. We both have our masters in social work. That's how she and I became colleagues. We found out about that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So we talked about advice for women that are looking to make a job jump or test the waters. What about that person who has started job hunting and it is not going well? What advice do you have to help them sort of regroup?
Yes, I think that you need a plan, a job search plan. If you don't have a plan, it's really hard to regroup and diagnose what the problem is. So I have some prospective clients reach out to me and say, hey, I'm getting interviews. I think it's my resume. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's your resume if you're getting in the door.
Right.
Which is great.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You need interview coaching. So I think that you really need to have a plan. So then that way you can kind of run a diagnostic test on what the issue may be. So, and I think a lot of people are missing that piece where they're like, hey, I'm doing, whether they realize it or not, kind of doing it the old school way of looking through the newspaper for what's open. That's basically online
that's what job boards are. Right.
So really getting a plan together of kind of steps on where you're going and what you need to do. Is basically like managing a project. So you are implementing the plan, but then you're also marking down what you have done. So then a week or a month, you can look back and be like, okay, I did these different things. These are my results. What can I do differently, essentially? So if you don't have a plan, get
You're
one.
lost, right? So in terms of getting a plan, I mean, obviously there's a lot of resources on LinkedIn. There's people like you giving free advice. You could work with a professional. I imagine that group, the professional social circle that we referenced earlier could definitely support you with that. What other ideas do you have for forging that plan?
Yeah, I think job clubs in the local area are a great way. Many of those are free, whether it's through, what is it called? Like Workforce. I know that they have like a finder online, but also many places of worship have them too. I know a big church in my area has a great job club. So I think those are helpful.
Sarah Johnston, Briefcase Coach, she has a list of job clubs on her website.
Oh, fabulous. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think that's a great area. I do think gathering like your personal board of directors is helpful, as long as you're staying kind of on task of, what you need to do essentially. So I do think while the free advice on LinkedIn, I know if people come to me and said, hey, I have all this free advice and I feel overwhelmed and I don't know how it applies to me. So that's where just talking through it with someone can be really helpful, whether it's a professional like you or I, or if it's a trusted colleague or friend, just kind of speaking that out and having someone else listening to be able to say like, oh, this is what I hear you saying. Is that working? What's not working?
Yeah. Help you forge the plan and keep you to task.
Right.
No, absolutely. What about, and we sort of talked about this earlier, that person who either hasn't been working in a long time or they have been working in a job they hate and they finally have the luxury because their kids are getting older to go do something exciting, and they could go in lots of different directions because they have a diverse skill set. What advice do you have to help someone that is contemplating going in a number of different directions?
Yeah, I think this is really common for women because we're just so darn talented. And we do a lot of different things in a lot of different places.
We wear lots of hats, right?
Yes, we do. And so I think it comes down to prioritizing your focus. So knowing what you value, right? You're not going to get all your values met out of your employment. It's just not possible. So really kind of prioritizing a list of what is important to you in the workplace. What skills do you want to use? You may be good at a lot of different things, but what do you want to use? What skills do you want to use? And I really love, and this kind of can go into that inner circle or having trusted peers that you can crowdsource your strengths. Shoot out an email or a Google survey asking, what are my top strengths, superpowers? What kind of challenges do you see me solving day in, day out? Even if it's not necessarily in the workforce, it could be past colleagues, current colleagues.
That's right. So it's what you're good at and what you like to do. And then obviously what the market will pay for.
Exactly. So I think overlaying that with the market then gives you a pretty good idea. So I would say focus on 1 to 3 target roles, 1 to 3 industries, and that will give you a pretty good focus on kind of where to go next. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. Because when you try to, a lot of people, and I'm sure you see this, they feel that the misnomer is, let me just put everything out there and someone will read it and figure out how I'm a great fit. It doesn't work that way. People are looking to match what they need against what you offer, and they're not going to do the digging unless that you're connecting the dots for them and it bubbles up to the top of the page.
Totally. And it's a lot of work to connect the dots. That's why we don't want to do it.
It is. Exactly.
That's why we're like, hey, can someone else figure this out? That would be great. So I think if we can do that ourselves, and I think that can also happen as you're starting the search, because the more people you're talking to, the more information you're learning about companies or the industry or the role in that company. And then you can kind of, as long as you have a general direction, then you're thinking, okay, I'm seeing these different themes or trends or salaries in this area. You can shift then, what is the priority? That kind of evolves as you're talking to people and as you're collecting that information. It's not just like, this is the plan, I have to stick to it. I mean, it's constantly evolving as you're learning more and talking to, your network of family and friends, and then, people in the companies that you want to work for, and then hopefully decision makers in those companies, so the information will then impact where you're going as well.
And that's the beauty of informational interviews and those networking conversations. Sometimes you don't know what you want. You don't know what you don't know, and you want to learn more. So talking to people that have been in those roles that pivoted from one place to another can help you figure out, is this what I really think I like? Or if not, then what part of it do I like, and navigate accordingly.
Yeah. And I think people can be very intimidated by some people would say this icky word of networking, but it's really just having meaningful conversations with people.
It's talking. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I worked with a woman. It's probably been, we've been working together for years, but when she was first going back, she's like, I know this sounds woo-woo, but I would have coffee with people. And she said, I would just sort of listen to my gut at the end. And if I like part of it, then I would then talk to another person based on the part of the conversation that got me excited. And she navigated into a totally different role that was not on her radar as a result.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, even circling back to that person and be like, hey, based on what you said, I'm pursuing this now. Do you know anyone else? It can be a continuous conversation that I think people just think networking is this very kind of vending machine. Like, do you have something? No. Okay.
Yeah, give me a job. Bye. Right.
It's not like that. It's, people hire people. And so having meaningful conversations and continuing to have those and, which would be more a fancy term of like nurturing your network. It's just basically keeping people in the loop, asking more questions, giving them value based on what you've talked about in the past, whether it's like an article you read or a podcast you listened to. It's really just about being a friendly human.
Yeah. And I do feel like as women, our networks are much greater than we initially give ourselves credit for. If you think about the sister of the parent that's sitting next to you at a soccer field, or that sort of 6 degree of separation. There's a lot of people that we come in touch with or come in contact with outside of this professional space that make up our network.
Yes. And I've heard a lot of stories of, I got connected to this person on the soccer field or, wherever they were because they were present with where they were, being where they were planted and being present. And I think just being willing to talk to people about your job search, people are scared to do that. But I think that's one of the key ingredients of a job search. Obviously, if you're employed, you have to be a little bit more intentional with that. But you need to talk to people about what you're looking for and what you want and asking them questions. That's how you're going to, I think, feel more content in the role that you do find.
I agree. And then along the way, you're fostering and nurturing your network.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is one of my sort of favorite questions to ask. Is there something that drives you just really nuts when it comes to mishaps that you see job seekers making? You just wish if there's one thing I could tell you, please don't do this. What would that be?
Well, I would say for me, what drives me nuts, maybe not necessarily a mishap, but it's just women not knowing their value. I mean, it's just, I speak with amazing men and women that are awesome and they don't know it. I mean, I'll deliver their resume and they're like, wow, this is incredible. And I'm like, oh,
this is you.
This is you. Like you gave me great material. This is you. Like you are awesome. And so that to me, I know that when I'm asking them questions about their unique contributions in the workplace, I get a lot of like, oh, well, that was part of a team.
Right. They downplay their contribution. Right.
Yes. And I'm like, oh, no. What did you do on the team? Wait, what was the result? I'm constantly pushing that. And they're like, okay, I see what you mean. Like, we will obviously say it was part of a team, but you were part of the team and got that result. It's just so interesting to me that they can't own that.
I hear that a lot too. It's sort of a little bit of imposter syndrome. And I always feel like whatever I write, make sure there's nothing that isn't factual in what I wrote.
Totally.
We're not going to exaggerate, but if this is true and you can speak to it, then you're not bragging. You're not speaking out of turn. You're just
stating the data.
You're right. You're stating the data. You're controlling the narrative. You're in a way that shows your value. What about discrimination? There's all sorts of isms, ageism, sexism, ethnicity is, I guess not, racism. What are your thoughts on the topic? Is this something that your clients are facing and has been coming up? How do you help them navigate?
Yeah. And I do think that gender discrimination exists today, unfortunately. And I think with resume writing, you and I both read the NRWA conference where
that Cheryl Milnick, it was all about bias. Yeah, it was fascinating.
Was talking about the Simon and Susan. So basically the same resume, but Simon was over, I think it was like 62%, something like that, was asked for an interview more of the time.
Just by virtue of the name, right?
Right.
And we as women use language that maybe doesn't help us. We'll ask for versus, we'll say, please consider me for this role versus I'm looking forward to next steps.
Right.
The confidence level isn't there.
Totally. And I do think women in general are more verbose. So the data that she even brought to the table was that women use 42 more characters on their resume, 12 more words. We write in paragraphs rather than bulleted lists. And so just the nature of a high-performing resume is lean and tight writing, and bulleted lists. So we have to kind of go against our natural inclination. And I see most resumes I see have paragraphs.
Yep, agree.
So
you're right, but the men are short and maybe
right,
you can
and a little bit more
verbose.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then one other area I would say is work gaps, because women. I saw a stat from the Harvard Business Review. It's a bit old. I think it's from like early 2000s that 43% of women opt out of work for a time. So, there are going to be gaps on your resume. And unfortunately, the way that hiring works, that it shows that you're going to be penalized for that. Mm-hmm. So I know in a recent study by Resume Go, they talked about if you can succinctly address your work gap, kind of shut down the imagination of the reader, you're going to be 60% more likely to receive a callback for an interview. So there's different tricks in your resume that you can employ to minimize those gaps while being truthful at the same time, using formatting, but also, using a quick line of, I went to get my MBA. That's why I left, or I took care of kids for 5 years, or what have you, and using your cover letter as well. Obviously, the main meat of your resume and your cover letter is about how they have to have you because of your different blend of skills and experiences. But I think it's important to shut down the imagination, because we'll think, well, maybe they were let go, or maybe,
that's right. Addressing the elephant in the room needs to come in the conversation. And I think a lot of it, tell me if you agree, is just like with ageism, you need to dispel the thoughts behind it. So when there's a work gap, there's a concern that you are not as knowledgeable, that you haven't kept up your skills. So whatever you can do to show that that's not the case, then you're just taking that off the table.
Right. And I think too, having, instead of a work experience section, having a relevant experience section is an easy fix for that. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Right. Of showing how you've bloomed, where you've been planted, and how you've taken leadership roles and grown your skills or pursued further education, for example. And that's a quick, easy resume fix that you can include those leadership skills that you've grown and developed.
Absolutely. And one cool thing about COVID, I don't know how women are finding the time to do this while they're wearing their homeschool hats, but I can't tell you how many women I have talked to that have been taking just really cool online certification courses. I just talked to a woman who got her diversity and inclusion certification or certificate at eCornell while she was homeschooling. But there's a lot of educational offerings that are online, and they are, I think, gaining in reputation. I think the fact, 10 years ago, if it wasn't from a brick and mortar school, it was sort of relegated to a lower tier. I don't think that's the case anymore. And there's lots of very cool learnings out there for free, low budget, that will show that you're keeping up that knowledge base.
I agree. And working in higher education in the past, I'm intrigued to see how they will pivot in the future with online courses. Mm-hmm. And I know that they've done a little bit of that, but even more so now of just the need
I agree.
Of that. So I'm interested to see how that goes.
It is going to be interesting. I know in the universities, I've seen people talking about the lifestyle that you're getting when you come to the campus.
Totally.
Where before they didn't talk like that. Right. So let's say someone comes to you, if we ever get out of our houses and we're in a social environment, and they say, I'm getting ready to job search. What are a couple of tools that I need, without a doubt, to get started? What would your answer be to that?
Yeah, I would say for the return to work, I really love what the Mom Project is doing. And this is a great resource, even if you're just kind of putting your toe back in, is thinking, hey, I want to take on a project or, a short-term project or position. So
just to sort of test the waters.
Yes, I think that is they're very committed to moms and work-life balance. I also think iRelaunch, they have return to work initiatives, much like an internship for graduate.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yes, this would be for return to work parents in certain industries. Corporations have these return to work, basically internships, however long those are. And then you are more marketable for that company, but also within the industry. So I think
companies have been smart about it because they recognize that you can get these talented women for much less than they, pay much less. And likewise, women are getting a chance to test the waters out.
Right. And I love this personally is a book that I love that I gift to my clients a lot. How Women Rise by Sally Helgeson. I don't know if that's how you say your name. And Marshall Goldsmith. Basically, they talk about 12 habits that hold women back from a career advancement. It's an excellent book. I recommend every woman reads it. It's so practical.
How Women Rise. Oh, that sounds, I've not heard of that.
It's excellent. I reckon it's really, really good, very informing. And also you can see yourself yep, I see myself doing that or no, right. It's just really, and then they give tips and strategies of how to overcome that. So I really love that book and love to gift that to my clients. I also think having an accomplishment journal or career journal is such an excellent tool, especially for women, whether you're in the workforce now or you're taking a career break. I think just getting into practice of recognizing your wins, even if it's hey, I put the baby down and he slept for 2 hours. I mean, just getting into the habit of writing down your victories and then speaking them to other people. So that's probably where kind of that inner circle is really helpful because we have a hard time talking about ourselves.
Yeah, we tend to dismiss what are our accomplishments?
Yes. And even my friends and I, we have kind of a little rule. They'll be like, oh, Meg, giving me a compliment, and I'll kind of wave it off, and we correct each other. Oh no, you should say thank you.
Yeah.
When someone gives you a compliment, you say thank you, not
That's right.
oh, it's nothing.
Right.
Or,
That's right.
It's just the practice of making your wins visible to yourself and then to others. So then when it's time to talk about yourself, you're very familiar and it doesn't feel weird or braggadocious. It's just this is how I've won. This is where I've won in it. And this is who I am.
And you're comfortable taking praise.
Totally.
I love that. So you have a very busy life. Tell me, and you've got your business and now this program that you're working on with Jessica Sweet. Tell me what's next for you. What do you see down the pike for 2020? In 2021,
well, I want to finish strong.
Okay.
Finish the year strong. So yes, I'm just continuing to work with clients. And then Jessica and I are launching our last career strategy mastermind for the year starting in October. So those have been really fun, really a highlight of my month, honestly. So that will kind of be the last little wrap for that.
Excellent. So if people want to learn more, reach out to you. I have your LinkedIn profile, your email, and your Hinge Resume website. Are those the best places to connect with you, or do you have any other places you'd like to shout out?
I just started Instagram, so you'll see my few little posts there, but really LinkedIn, I'm on every day and chatting and making connections with people there. So that's probably the best way, or email.
Excellent.
Get in touch.
Well, Meg, thank you so much. You're the best. I love what you shared. Really great resources, from books to articles. and just super practical. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Virginia. It's been really fun.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.